Today on Our Space, we heard of a boy that never grew up into a man and a woman that took the stage. No, this boy isn't Peter Pan. It's a dirty dog who likes to crawl back to things that didn't work the first time around. Husband cheated with divorced wife. Now she's pregnant for him. So I destroy his life completely. I'm 37 female. My husband is 42 male. History. Since when I was a little girl, I loved to sing. Growing up, I learned to play the piano at a young age. Completely idolized Beyoncé. Wanted to be just like her. Unlike her though, I was completely in love with jazz. With hopes of becoming a great performer one day. Maybe another Norah Jones or Mary Lou Williams. At the time when we met, I'd just begun my career in music. I hadn't had much luck in getting a label or anything big. I was ordered to be performing at cafes, clubs, and festivals, small-time stuff. I had a lot of things going on in my life, trying to make ends meet, performing nights, bettering my music, and dealing with the stress of it all. I wasn't exactly looking for love. I had dated just one person. Way back in high school. It wasn't a great experience. I met my husband at a cafe where I and my friends loved to hang out a lot. I performed a lot there too. It was at one of our special Friday open mic amateur nights, which I and my friends never missed. I noticed him from the moment he walked in. I was on set singing. He came in with a few friends who were regulars of the cafe. And I knew most of them, but he was new. I watched him out of the corner of my eye as he watched me sing and play the piano. All night, he couldn't hide his awe. I had never seen him before and was very curious to meet the mysterious person. After my set was over that night, my friends called me over to introduce us. We had about 10 minutes of small talk. He complimented my voice and asked me if I was performing anywhere else. I told him about another coffee shop where I always had a gig on Monday nights. He told me he'd try to come to check it out. I was very surprised. He showed up on my gig that Monday. He was early. During a 30-minute intermission, he came over and we talked a lot. He had been married before, but had no kids from the marriage. He and his ex-wife kept in touch much. She ran off to Copenhagen with her new boyfriend leaving him, but they were cool. I didn't mind overall. I loved his quiet, boyish, and humble demeanor. And I felt like we had a good connection going. When I went to the next Friday night, open mic event, the following week at the cafe, was hoping and prayed that he'd showed up again. He did. This time, he offered to play the piano for me. We performed together all night. And the crowd loved us. I remember that the best one we did was a special cover of Marvin Gaye's Ain't No Mountain High Enough. The crowd loved it. That night, he asked me for my number. And if I'd love to go out sometime, I said, yes. And we had our first official date. A week after, we were inseparable. We both fell for each other very quickly. At the very heart of the attraction, however, was the knowledge that our hearts and minds were fully at home with each other. We were also best friends. Everything between us just clicked and felt right. Our personalities matched. We shared the same faith and had the same musical interests and tastes. I think we both knew we were going to be together in marriage. We were just right for each other. He proposed to me about 6 months after we met. Then we married another 3 months after that. I was still 33. We had literally known each other for 6 months before getting married. If anyone had told me before that I would marry someone after just 6 months of dating or knowing them, I wouldn't have believed it. I always thought it was a good idea to know someone at least a year or more before engagement, but I think we both knew what we wanted and saw it in each other. Also, we were well into adulthood. The wedding was quite simple and beautiful. We were married on a beach in early June. 3 years into our marriage, we were still married and in love. I had gotten a job as a performer in a popular jazz club downtown. I also worked part-time as a bartender in the same club. For those who don't know properly, a jazz club is a venue where the primary entertainment is the performance of live jazz music, like a type of nightclub or bar. Worked at night performing till the early hours of the morning. He had a job as an architect with a firm. Things were really going well with us. We hadn't many problems or issues except for the fact that we were so busy working and chasing our dreams, we'd never really talked or thought about starting a family. He was ready to, but at the time, in my career, being pregnant wasn't something I could afford much. We talked about it, and we came to an agreement. I told him there wasn't any rush. I just needed time to establish myself properly. And he understood. Things in my career got a lot better. Performing at the club made me meet a lot of exciting new prominent people. That would play a significant part in my career. As for my marriage, though, not so great. I owed it to us not spending as much time as we should. I worked nights at the club, usually from 7 till 3 or 4 in the morning. And he'd leave for work around 7 a.m. and got off when I was leaving. But we made time. I was off Sundays and we'd stay home and catch up with each other. Occasionally came to the club to watch me perform and hang. But stopped completely after a while, which I think was the first sign that things weren't going so great. When I asked why he didn't watch my sets anymore, he explained that he landed this new project with a client that needed to his time. I understood, but it wasn't the first time he'd handled a project before. He always found time to come. We didn't spend Sundays together anymore. He had to rush out to attend business meetings or emergency staff meetings or something. I had no reason not to believe him. I felt everything was my fault as a result of my stupid job and my devotion to my music. I contemplated leaving it. I was scared it was either him or my career. One night, while I was at work, I got a call from Mrs. Hong, our neighbor. A nice old Chinese lady. She'd been to 2 of my performances. She apologized for calling and said she noticed a car, a black Dodge, parked in the back alley near my house. She tried. Eric Salinosa was answering. Some lights were turned on. This was 2:24 a.m. in the morning. She asked if she should call the police. I got a little worried, but I told her not to call the cops and everything was fine. I'd check in. I tried calling Eric myself. No answer. I talked to my boss and told him I had to leave early. It was an emergency. Got out of my car and left. I was pulling up around the corner when I saw the figure of a woman get into the black Dodge and drive off with Eric on the sidewalk waving. Confused, I parked and ran to him. He looked tensed. I asked him why he wasn't picking up his phone, and who was that in the black Dodge. He said it was his ex-wife. He met her at the mall and get this, she'd moved back from Copenhagen. Good news, I guess. I asked him why she was over so late and what they were doing that he was so busy he didn't pick up the phone. And he laughed it off and apologized that they were so wrapped up, catching up, and she had lost track of time and had forgotten to turn off the Do Not Disturb when he got off work and didn't hear his phone ring out. I had no issues with his ex-wife, though. I'd never met her before. I knew the kind of relationship they had. He even let me read their texts and listen on their calls. They had been married 2 years before she woke up one morning and decided that she didn't love him anymore and ran off with her Danish boyfriend in Copenhagen. Even after the divorce, they both kept in touch and were good friends. And now she was back. I still had this gut-wrenching feeling that she was trouble, and he brought her home and they lost track of time. Things with us didn't improve, and I tried to get him to see a counselor with me or talk to someone. He wasn't against it, but was too busy. Eventually, we agreed to go on a vacation, a road trip, and we would go to my parents in Louisiana. It'd just be us, the road, and music. We'd spend quality time together. One night, after a performance in the club, I felt sick, so I was given a break from work. I got into my car and decided to call Eric that I was on my way, but later just decided to surprise him. I drove home, got into the house, he asked me what was wrong. I couldn't speak. I went to the master bathroom and threw up a little in the toilet. He came up and helped me, soothing me. I was counting myself lucky at how I could find such a sweet man when out of the corner of my eyes I noticed something on the sink. They were a pair of earrings and clearly not mine. I asked who owned the earrings. He said they were mine, and why I was asking him. I was the only one who wore earrings. I told him they weren't mine. And even if they were, I'd never leave him on the sink. He said I was sick, and I wasn't thinking straight. It had nothing to do with being sick. I knew for sure the earrings weren't mine. I dropped it because I was too sick to even fight. The earrings made me worse. I was finally open to the thought that he could and was cheating on me. We went to the hospital the next day. I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. Doctors said I was overstressed, and I was told to lay off my job for a while and take my medication. All through the appointment, I couldn't get myself to focus. I kept going back to those earrings. I started to think maybe I had borrowed it from one of my girlfriends and forgot to return it, or maybe I bought them and forgot about it. Whatever excuse I brought up, it couldn't explain enough the pair of earrings. On our way home, I brought it up again, and we had a small fight for the first time. I accused him of cheating. While I was out working my butt off, he was bringing his horrors over. I called him names. He said I was selfish, insensitive, and ungrateful. We didn't talk to each other for weeks. I knew for sure he was seeing someone, but didn't know who. My friends tried to give me to hire a pie, but it didn't give it much thought. After 2 weeks of not talking to each other, I went back to work. It had started affecting my music and performances. I'd stutter on stage or cry and couldn't keep my emotions in check. When my boss asked what was wrong, I told her about everything with Eric. She was sympathetic and gave me another week off to get things sorted. We made up and finally agreed to see someone. Left on a Monday, and it was totally worth it. The counselor pointed out a lot of issues and how they were affecting us. The major being that we weren't able to separate the stress of workday from our relationship, and was affecting us from enjoying each other's companionship in love. Erica and I talked a lot about a lot of things. I had wanted to bring up the earrings again, but it felt we were making progress enough. We decided to spend the whole week together, staying home and catching up, and we went on a date for the first time after a while. On our second night, we went to see a movie at the downtown cinema. It was like old times. Before we were married. Just as we bought our tickets, we ran into his ex-wife, which at first thought would complicate things, but surprisingly enough, she was nice. She was a nice pretty redhead, very fit. Anyways, she was with a new boyfriend, and we all decided to double date the next night. Can't believe I actually liked her. The next night, we met up with her and Brandon, her boyfriend. Things were going on pretty great. She had a lot of stories to tell because she's basically been all over the world. She and Eric had sort of a brother-sister vibe. I enjoyed the first 2 hours of the night, then things went wrong. She had been showing me photos of places she'd been to and all the adventures she had. I wasn't much of a travel person, but I absolutely loved travel stories. She showed me photos of the time she spent vacating in Bornholm, a very beautiful place in Copenhagen. In one of the photos, she was having dinner with friends. I was admiring how beautiful her dress was, her hair, and that's when I noticed her earrings. They were very nice and also very familiar. Very familiar to the ones I found in my bathroom. I could feel rage rising me. I couldn't breathe. I was able to keep myself from punching that woman square in the nose and causing a scene. I don't know. She asked if I was okay and I look white. Apparently, the color I drained from my face. I got up and told Eric to take me home, barely controlling my breathing. I didn't say anything, although he asked a million times what the problem was. I sat in silence. We got home and still didn't say a word. He continued to ask. I started to cry and asked why he would do such a thing to us. I told him I knew about the earrings and that they were affair partners. We gotta do a huge fight, him denying it. And at the same time, blaming me for everything happening. Everything we built up. The past days completely down in the drain. He said he was sorry if he hurt me, and it was a stupid mistake. I was still sick and heartbroken from the whole thing. And didn't know what to do. I told him I didn't want to be around him and I wanted him to leave. He begged and he suggested I spend the remaining days I had out of town with my mom and really think things over, and when I was ready, we could talk. I said fine. He was right. A couple of days home would give me time to think about our future and what he'd done. I packed light and left the next day. He offered to drive me even after refusing his offer and preferring to take the bus. We left early. It was a day's drive to Louisiana and an awkwardly silent one. It took time to reflect on us. How long had this been going on? This affair been going on? He had said she had just recently come back from Copenhagen, so maybe it was a fling, a one-time stand or something. I cleared my head and decided to focus on just me for the rest of my time off work. I'd listen to music and play the piano. And just spend time with family. It had been a long time since I've been home. And as much as my mom called and always invited us over for Thanksgiving or dinner or something, we're always too busy to make it. I liked the fact that she understood. When I was ready, I and Eric would have a long talk. I was already considering a divorce. We were driving for about 4 hours when he said I should take the wheel, and he needed a quick shut-eye. He whined about how he hadn't slept much and that he was aching and needed a break. I took the wheel and drove while he slept. He handed me his phone to use the map. I guess he was pretty tired because he fell asleep quickly. I looked at him with pity and decided maybe it was time we went our separate ways. Just then a message came in from his ex-wife. It read, "I know I'm not supposed to reach you this way, but it's urgent. Text me on Telegram." I was confused. I thought of waking him and showing the text, but quickly decided against it. I knew he was on other social media, but didn't know he had a Telegram. Snooped around and found it in the phone freezer. I entered and found a message from his ex. It was a picture of a sonogram and a text that read, "It's a baby girl." I swerved off the road and parked. How he was still asleep after that swerve, I don't know. Turns out he and his ex-wife were having a baby. I couldn't believe it. She'd been back from Copenhagen for almost a year now, and not very recently as he had said. And they've been having an affair for most of that time. They were still in love with each other and were even making plans to get back with each other. I also found texts, pictures, videos, and phone calls with 3 other women, 2 of which I knew and was having affairs with them as well. I took screenshots. He slept all this while, and I continued driving. There was a gas station up ahead. I pulled up into it. He finally woke up and asked why we weren't moving. I explained I needed to get gas and get something from a store. He said, "Okay," and went back to sleep. I went inside and went to the bathroom to cry. I was really hurt and angry at myself. I stopped crying and came out of the bathroom. I paid for gas and stepped out. I noticed a trucker finishing up. I looked back at sleeping Eric in the car and thought, good riddance. I asked the kind man if he could give me a ride into town. He agreed. I left with him immediately. I got to Louisiana. I took a flight back home, practiced things, left them on the lawn in the rain. I bought a hard drive, the exact type he stored, the 3D model property of his client, transferred all the screenshots I took and naked photos of him and his affair partner onto it. I also made a short tape to clarify to whoever played it exactly who he was. Then I switched it with the original. He was to have a presentation the next day with his client to unveil it. I guess they were in for surprise when the meeting started. I contacted a lawyer and arranged for him to be served as soon as he came home. He had called everyone we knew looking for me. I didn't take his calls but explained to everyone who called. On his behalf, what a scumbag he truly was. After 4 months, we were officially divorced. I heard he lost the project because the client was irreverent and didn't support his actions or take the videos and pictures nicely. I moved to Texas where I met my current husband. We're happily married with 3 kids, and I work in a large jazz club in Houston. Geez, OP. I don't understand why people try to live double lives. If you're still in love with your ex, why are you trying to fake a life with someone else? Why would he try to hide that? And you know he was only getting you out of the house so he could have time with his ex. It wasn't so you could have space from him. It was so he could have space from you. I'm sure he knew that you were wanting to end things, and he was hoping it would end that way before you found out more about what he and his ex do. Turns out, there was more than just a brother-sister vibe, and to say they were wrapped up together so he didn't answer the phone. I'm sure that's exactly what they were, wrapped up in each other's naked bodies. Thoughts? You for joining us today on our space. Like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. We hate for you to miss out. You want to listen to more stories from me? Check out our lounge where I feature a larger variety of non-cheating related stories. See you there.